The boxing world exploded the moment tensions between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol spilled into public view during a heated exchange centered around one of the most controversial and emotionally charged topics in modern boxing, catchweight demands. Because what initially appeared to be ordinary negotiation discussions quickly escalated into visible frustration, direct accusations, and public challenges that instantly transformed the situation into one of the sport's biggest talking points, capturing the attention of fans across the United States and the United Kingdom almost immediately, especially after Benavidez reportedly delivered a blunt message making it clear that in his view, Bivol should either accept the fight under what he considers fair conditions or step aside entirely, a statement that dramatically intensified the narrative surrounding the matchup and reignited broader debates about negotiation tactics, leverage, and risk management at the elite level of boxing, because catchweight discussions have long divided the sport, with some fighters viewing them as strategic compromises necessary to finalize major events while others see them as attempts to manipulate physical advantages before the opening bell even rings, and in this particular case, the emotional intensity behind the exchange made it feel far more personal than routine business negotiations, creating the impression that both fighters fully understand the enormous stakes attached to the matchup, not only in terms of championships and financial rewards, but also legacy, public perception, and long-term positioning within boxing's elite hierarchy, and that combination of tension, uncertainty, and public confrontation is exactly why the situation spread so rapidly across social media and boxing discussions worldwide, with fans and analysts immediately beginning to debate whether this explosive moment would ultimately push the fight closer to reality or drive both sides even further apart. What made the situation between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol feel so explosive was not simply the disagreement over catchweight demands itself, but the deeper tension that has clearly been building around both fighters for months as their paths have gradually moved closer toward a possible collision at the highest level of the division, because Benavidez has consistently positioned himself as a fighter aggressively chasing elite challenges in pursuit of proving that he belongs among the most dangerous and avoided names in boxing, repeatedly calling for opportunities against top champions and showing a willingness to embrace high-risk matchups that many others might hesitate to take, while Bivol has built his entire reputation around discipline, technical precision, calculated decision-making, and a highly controlled approach both inside and outside the ring, creating a fascinating clash not only of fighting styles, but also of personalities, philosophies, and negotiation mindsets, where Benavidez projects intensity, urgency, and confrontation while Bivol represents patience, structure, and strategic caution, and that contrast is exactly why the public exchange immediately felt larger than ordinary contract discussions, because fans across the United States and the United Kingdom could sense that this was really about far more than numbers on paper or weight conditions alone. It was about pride, leverage, legacy, and control over the narrative surrounding who truly wants the fight and under what circumstances it should happen, turning what might have been a routine negotiation issue into a much more emotional and symbolic confrontation that now carries major implications for both fighters' reputations moving forward. According to growing reports and widespread online discussion, the conflict between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol intensified dramatically around the issue of a proposed catchweight, with serious questions emerging over whether any adjustment to the agreed fighting weight would create an unfair competitive advantage or potentially compromise the integrity and legitimacy of the matchup itself. And once those rumors began circulating publicly, the conversation immediately exploded across boxing media and social platforms as fans rushed to debate which fighter was genuinely pushing to make the fight happen and which side might be attempting to gain strategic leverage before negotiations could fully progress, because catchweight negotiations in boxing have always carried emotional and political weight beyond the numbers themselves, often becoming symbolic of deeper issues involving confidence, risk tolerance, bargaining power, and control over the conditions of the fight, and in this case, the public nature of the disagreement intensified scrutiny on both camps, with supporters of Benavidez arguing that elite champions should compete under clear and fair championship standards without additional conditions, while supporters of Bivol emphasized the importance of calculated preparation, proper terms, and protecting competitive balance in a sport where even small physical differences can significantly impact performance at the highest level, creating a situation where the debate quickly evolved from a technical contract issue into a much broader argument about fairness, accountability, and who truly carries the stronger negotiating position, and that uncertainty only fueled more intrigue among fans across the United States and the United Kingdom, who increasingly viewed every public comment, interview, And social media reaction is part of a larger psychological battle unfolding long before either fighter potentially steps into the ring. David Benavidez's side appeared especially frustrated as the situation surrounding the potential clash with Dmitry Bivol continued developing, repeatedly emphasizing the belief that championship-level fights should take place under clear, direct, and fair competitive terms without additional complications that could alter the balance of the matchup before the opening bell even rings. And according to growing reports and reactions surrounding the negotiations, that frustration gradually became more visible as emotions reportedly intensified during discussions, transforming what might normally have remained a private contractual disagreement into a full public controversy that immediately captured the attention of the boxing world, because once disagreements over weight conditions, leverage, and negotiation demands become public, they rarely stay limited to technical details alone. Instead, they quickly evolve into debates about credibility, willingness to fight, and which side fans believe is acting from a position of confidence versus caution, and in this case, Benavidez's camp appeared eager to frame the issue as a matter of competitive fairness and championship integrity, reinforcing the image of a fighter determined to challenge elite opponents without hesitation or special conditions, while the growing tension surrounding the discussions added an emotional intensity that made the situation feel increasingly personal rather than purely business-oriented, and that shift dramatically amplified public interest across the United States and the United Kingdom, where fans and analysts immediately began dissecting every statement, reaction, and rumor for clues about whether the negotiations were moving closer toward a historic fight or drifting further into conflict and mistrust behind the scenes. At the center of the growing debate surrounding the potential showdown between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol is the perception of risk, because many fans and analysts view Benavidez as one of the most dangerous and avoided fighters in modern boxing due to his relentless forward pressure, overwhelming punch volume, physical intensity, and ability to gradually break opponents down through non-stop aggression over the course of a fight, while Bivol has earned global respect as one of the sport's smartest, most disciplined, and technically refined champions, known for his composure, footwork, defensive awareness, and tactical precision under pressure, meaning that any matchup between them instantly becomes far more than a routine title fight. It becomes a collision between two elite systems of boxing philosophy where every strategic detail could dramatically influence the outcome, and that is exactly why negotiations surrounding the fight have generated such enormous attention across the United States and the United Kingdom, because fans understand that both men represent extremely high-risk challenges in completely different ways, with Benavidez bringing physical pressure and offensive chaos capable of overwhelming opponents mentally and physically, while Bivol offers the type of calm technical control and ring intelligence that can neutralize aggression through discipline and precision, creating a stylistic contrast where neither fighter enters the matchup with an obvious or comfortable advantage, and that reality naturally intensifies every disagreement surrounding negotiations, catchweight demands, and fight conditions, since both sides fully understand the magnitude of the challenge and the legacy implications attached to whichever fighter ultimately emerges victorious if the bout becomes reality. Analysts quickly began explaining why catchweight discussions between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol became so controversial so rapidly, emphasizing that in elite-level boxing, even seemingly small adjustments in weight can significantly influence stamina, speed, punch resistance, recovery, endurance, and overall physical performance, particularly when two world-class fighters are already separated by extremely narrow competitive margins, because at the highest level of the sport, tiny physical differences can completely alter how a matchup unfolds over 12 rounds, affecting not only power and conditioning but also movement efficiency, reaction timing, and the ability to maintain tactical discipline under pressure, which is why catchweight negotiations are often viewed as far more than routine contractual details. They are strategic decisions that can subtly reshape the balance of the fight before either athlete even steps into the ring, and in this case, the public debate intensified because both Benavidez and Bivol possess styles heavily connected to physical rhythm and conditioning in different ways, with Benavidez relying on sustained pressure, volume, and physical intensity to overwhelm opponents over time, while Bivol depends on precise footwork, controlled pacing, technical sharpness, and disciplined movement to neutralize aggression and maintain command of exchanges, meaning that any change in weight conditions naturally raises questions about who benefits physically and strategically from those adjustments, and that complexity is exactly why fans across the United States and the United Kingdom immediately became so invested in the controversy, because the deeper the discussions around catchweight evolved, the more it began to feel like an early tactical battle taking place. outside the ring long before the fight itself could potentially happen. At the same time, many voices within the boxing world argue that the entire controversy surrounding the negotiations between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol also reflects a basic reality of the sport itself, because negotiations, leverage discussions, and debates over conditions have always been a natural part of boxing business at the elite level, especially when massive fights involving championships, legacy, and enormous financial stakes are on the table, and from that perspective, both fighters have every right to pursue terms they believe maximize their chances of success inside the ring, whether that involves weight considerations, timing, financial structure, or strategic preparation, creating a sharp divide among fans and analysts between those who prioritize making the fight happen under almost any circumstances and those who believe competitive fairness and championship integrity must remain the highest priority regardless of how badly the public wants the matchup, and that divide has become one of the most fascinating parts of the entire situation because it reveals how differently people view the balance between business strategy and sporting legitimacy in modern boxing, with some supporters arguing that elite fighters should accept difficult conditions if it means delivering the biggest possible fights for the sport, while others insist that even small negotiated advantages can significantly influence outcomes at the highest level and therefore should never be dismissed as minor details, especially in a matchup where the stylistic and physical margins between Benavidez and Bivol already appear incredibly narrow, and this ongoing debate has only intensified public interest across the United States and the United Kingdom, where every new rumor, statement, and reported negotiation detail continues fueling speculation about whether the tension surrounding the fight will eventually lead to compromise and a blockbuster showdown, or push the sides further apart as both camps continue fighting for strategic control before the first punch is ever thrown. As clips, quotes, and reports connected to the heated exchange between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol continued spreading rapidly across social media platforms, the boxing world erupted with reactions almost instantly, transforming the situation from a private negotiation dispute into a full public debate driven by fan emotion, media narratives, and non-stop online analysis, with some supporters accusing Bivol of hesitation or excessive caution regarding the proposed fight conditions, while others strongly defended his position and argued that Benavidez's aggressive public pressure was itself part of a calculated strategy designed to influence public opinion, control the narrative, and increase psychological leverage before any official agreements were fully finalized. And that divide perfectly highlighted how modern boxing negotiations often unfold not only behind closed doors between teams and promoters, but also publicly through interviews, viral clips, social media reactions, and fan perception battles that can dramatically shape momentum surrounding a potential matchup, because once emotions and narratives begin circulating online, every statement becomes interpreted strategically, every reaction is analyzed for hidden meaning, and every silence can suddenly be viewed as weakness, caution, or negotiation tactics depending on which side fans support, and in this case, the intensity of the public response only amplified the intrigue surrounding the potential showdown, particularly across the United States and the United Kingdom, where boxing audiences immediately began dissecting not just the catchweight issue itself, but the deeper psychological battle unfolding beneath the surface, debating whether Benavidez's confrontational approach reflected genuine frustration and confidence, or whether it represented a deliberate attempt to pressure Bivol into accepting terms while simultaneously strengthening public perception that he is the fighter most aggressively pursuing the challenge. What added even more intrigue to the growing tension between David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol was the larger historical context surrounding Bivol's reputation and career trajectory, because after defeating elite-level opponents and firmly establishing himself as one of the most technically complete, disciplined, and intelligent fighters in modern boxing, expectations surrounding every future matchup connected to him have risen dramatically, meaning that each negotiation, public statement, and reported disagreement now receives enormous scrutiny from fans, analysts, and media across the United States and the United Kingdom, who increasingly view Bivol not simply as another champion, but as a defining figure in the sport whose decisions carry major implications for the division and for boxing's elite hierarchy overall. And that elevated status naturally intensifies the pressure surrounding situations like this, because once a fighter reaches Bivol's level of credibility and accomplishment, the public begins expecting him to consistently pursue the biggest and most dangerous available challenges regardless of negotiation complexity, while at the same time supporters of Bivol argue that his reputation for discipline and calculated preparation is precisely what allowed him to reach this level in the first place, meaning it would make little sense for him to approach negotiations recklessly simply to satisfy public pressure or emotional narratives online, creating a fascinating conflict between the demands of legacy building and the realities of strategic career management, and that tension is exactly why this controversy has become so captivating to so many observers, because beneath the catchweight debate itself lies a much deeper conversation about risk, leverage,